Welcome to Meteor Interviews, a series of interviews with Meteor developers. My name is Paul Dowman. This podcast is produced by OKGrow. We build web and mobile apps for clients using Meteor. You can find us at okgrow.com. Today I'm speaking with Abhi Aiyer. Abhi is a software engineer at Workpop, which is a large Meteor app and one of the earliest success stories for Meteor. Hey, Abhi.
Hey, man. How are you doing?
Good. Do you want to give us a quick summary of what Workpop does?
Yes, definitely. So Workpop is a startup located in Los Angeles, California. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to disrupt the service industry. And I'm not talking about you and me being very technical people. We're trying to help people get jobs in the service industry. There are two-thirds of the working population is in the service industry. People like baristas, people who work at supermarkets. And right now, there's not a really transparent way for them to get jobs. They go apply on Craigslist and they don't hear anything back. And it's really tough for someone to get a job these days. On the flip side, the employer side, people who hire the service industry, it's super tough because there's a ton of applications. It's hard to weed through who's qualified, who's not qualified. So at Workpop, we build tools for both sides of the coin to help people find each other. And for candidates, we want to get them a job they love, and employers, we want to get them employees they love. So that's pretty much Workpop in a nutshell. And we were an early success story for Meteor. I personally would not say we're a huge success yet because we're not as big as Facebook. But
good, set those sights high.
Yeah. But we definitely love using Meteor, and we've hit scaling issues, and we've overcome that. And, we're progressing every day. Cool.
Well, I personally would like to learn a lot more about front-end architecture at scale, and I know you've learned a lot about that. So maybe let's get into some of that stuff. So we first met when OKGrow started working with Workpop about a year ago, and at that time Workpop was a pretty substantial app, and so we worked together for like 8 months, and over that time I saw the team grow a lot, and the code base grew a lot, and 2 mobile apps were launched. So where are you guys at now? How big is the team?
So now we're at 19 engineers. Well, not 19 engineers. I'm sorry. We're at around 16 engineers, and total size is about 20. And we added 4 salespeople, so I think we're at 24 now in terms of total scope. In terms of people working on front end, because that's what we're talking about today, there are 3 people working on front end, including myself, and also, since Meteor is a full stack platform, even our back-end engineers do a lot of front end as well. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
So there's a lot of people touching this code. What do you guys do to make all of that manageable?
Yeah. So number one thing that we do to make our code manageable is we use ESLint for the JavaScript side. We use static analysis that way. We have CSS lint or less lint because I picked that up from Carl from OKGrow to use less. So if no one likes less, blame Carl. And then just being very rigorous in code reviews. What we really want to do is everything needs to be in a reusable state. You could build something very small, and even though we don't know if it's going to be reused tomorrow, we build things in a reusable state. That way, if we ever find something that looks like something else that we built, we try to morph things into these reusable components. And when I was working with OKGrow, we started that journey together when we were starting to build separate projects, and the app was starting to scale. We had the OKGrow guys work on a certain section of the app, and I was working on a certain section, and another person was working on another section, all simultaneously working and building similar components. So that's when we actually started. At our company, we have one front-end package called Pop, and that holds all of our front-end components, and these are all stupid components. And what I mean by that is they are just used for presentation. And that was the whole goal. Is like a lot of people have a lot of opinions about how their components should be structured, and I said, you know what? I don't want to deal with your opinions. This component takes X, Y, and Z to do whatever you want. As long as you give it X, Y, and Z in whatever fashion, you could do whatever you like with it. Right. Yeah.
This sounds like a lot of what people are talking about with React now. So you guys are using Blaze, right?
So pretty much 100% of the app right now is in Blaze, and we have I'll be honest, we're not very happy with it. We get the job done, but we're not very happy with it, and that's because Blaze has these faults that are very hard for new developers to really get deep into the heart of it. Now, Blaze is great for building your app when you first start, but people who have a thirst for knowledge, they go deeper and deeper into the source code, and it's hard to reason about things like data context, why helpers run 5 times before they actually render something, and we had this block in our head that it's really hard to reason about things, and as we scale our team, we don't want to be spending time teaching things that you should be able to go read and understand 100% right away. Um, so we're moving to React.
Cool. So tell me about what features of Blaze make it difficult to scale. So you mentioned a couple things, like you mentioned the data context.
Yeah.
Do you think that's an inherently bad way to reuse to make reusable components, or can you manage it?
No, you can totally manage it. And I'm not a Blaze basher. Like a lot of the community right now is torn between Blaze, React, Angular, and the people that are against Blaze are, wholeheartedly against it. And honestly, Blaze has a little bit of issues, right? Data context is one. No control over rendering is another, right? You could have several templates in a bigger template that all share a reactive data context. Well, you actually re-render all the templates when that data context changes. And also, there's no really nice way to write components. At Workpop, we've done that by pretty much getting the word template out of our dictionary and considering a template a component and working around the small issues that we have with it. Another problem with Blaze is you can't abstract template actions, and actions are necessarily, it's called an event, right? Template events may be reused between code, right? Like this template and this template actually do the same thing, but they look differently. It's hard to abstract these things. So we've built some libraries to help that, and we can talk about that a little bit later, but those will be used by the community hopefully soon. So,
Right.
yeah.
So in Blaze, when you want to make something that is a component, so you've got your two files, you've got your template, you've got your JavaScript with the helpers and events and things, and so you can kind of keep them together, and you can the data context is sort of the definition of how you pass data in and out of it. Are there any patterns that you guys have found that makes it easier or harder to do that?
Definitely, and I would love to tell you. So right now, like in a Blaze setup, when you have your parent template has some data context, and you have a child template, the child template actually automatically inherits data context from the parent without you explicitly passing anything in. Okay, and so when you're going really fast, that's amazing, right? You don't have to actually worry about passing data context from the top to the bottom. Well, here's the thing: you can write a bunch of code with you assuming that your child template has data context. The minute I go to my child template and I add some context of its own, it actually wipes away the parent's context's data. And that actually will cause a lot of bugs in your template code because you have made assumptions based on what the data is. So a good pattern to get away from that, is always implicitly push data context down from the parent to the child. Doesn't matter if the child will inherently get it, you just do it anyway. And that way you don't have to save yourself from reasoning about what this means in a template helper. You actually know exactly what data context the child template will have. And that's another big thing that we faced, like a lot of the times our analytics events would stop working. And that's because we made assumptions about what the data context for a parameter that we put into our button clicks are, And all of a sudden you see in Mixpanel or Kissmetrics, whatever you guys use, there's a big curve going up. And then one day it just crashes down and you don't know exactly why. And it's because of a client-side error like that. And any front-end developer should just be ashamed of things like that because those really move your business forward. These metrics you're gathering, small bugs like this, which are so easy to prevent.
Right.
that they crash your whole analytics system for a day. That sucks.
Right. And because you didn't see it on the page because it's just the analytics, then
Yes.
it didn't, easy to miss
Yeah.
that.
Also, if you're doing method calls from template events and they don't have the right data context, you get errors in your console, and you have to go the next day. You see Kadira and it's just blasting with errors, and you realize, oh, the data context changed. And if I had just done blaze.getData or template instance.data, I would have had a for sure way to know what my data context is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell us about that. So
Sure.
so yeah, there's that's like maybe something that you might not think to do right away. You would just use this. So
Yes. So I am a huge proponent of not using this. I think this is like the root of all evil in Blaze code.
and in JavaScript code too,
In the JavaScript
perhaps.
code, maybe because in React, this is always what you expect.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in ES6 syntax for React components, there's a little trickiness about how this actually operates. But I would say other than that, in React code, especially if you're using like react.create class, this is pretty much sure to be exactly what you expect.
Mm-hmm.
And in Blaze, this is not guaranteed to be what you expect. Also, you don't have a handy dandy Chrome dev tool for Blaze that you can actually go and inspect what this actually was. So what I've preached to Blaze noobs, Meteor noobs, or even my own teammates is to never use this at all. If you're in a template helper, you should get the template instance, right? Var template equals template instance, or const if you'd like to be all ES 2015 like, and right there you have the instance of the template. You have access to the reactive variables that you've bound to the template. You have access to the data context of the template. You have your map right ahead of you, and you can start doing things. Sometimes when I'm building template helpers, I just do template. I just console.log template instance, and I see what I have, and then I start writing my code.
Yeah.
And that is actually that one. It sucks to do that because it takes time. It takes time away from you writing stuff. If we had some good dev tools, that would not be the case. But it actually helps me prevent bugs because I know exactly what I'm working with. And if I'm missing something, there's a question right there to go answer. Why am I missing this? Where is the data? And you can actually traverse the template tree up to see where you're missing things.
Right. So I guess you have to be careful not when you're reusing templates. You have to be careful to make sure that they are being explicitly passed.
Correct.
All the data that they're going to use.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Cool. So what else do you guys do that helps you keep these things manageable, or what problems did you guys run into?
So a lot of the stuff that has helped us, not get bit by the data context issue is one, put the rule in the style guide. So we have a style guide, and new employees read the style guide. They understand the pattern, and there's still potential there to mess it up, and that's okay. The best we could have done for that, because it's hard to do static analysis on this, right? There's a lot of stuff that uses this, and you'll have to know that you're in a template, and it's actually too complicated to do it that way. But another good strategy is to split your templates, one template per file. And we have an ESLint rule that searches the file structure, reads the templates, and sees if there's any duplicate, if there's two template calls in one file. And nice. the reason why I stress to put templates in one file is one, that you get more organized that way. When you look at something, you don't get confused by all the 50 other calls that may be in the file. And that way you can actually isolate your thinking. When you're thinking and writing UI code, you can be in isolation. Mm-hmm. You're worrying about this thing. And that's really has helped us. Like, we really got bit in the past really hard. One, I've already told you about the analytics thing, but we have a community feature where you can ask people for help, and you can upvote things and downvote things. And one day we refactored and we didn't worry about data context. And when we were trying to post, which is the main feature of a community, is to post stuff, we were getting internal server errors because the data context didn't exist for the post ID. Another example is this one's funny. Another example is we can decline candidates in our employer flow. An employer can decline candidates. So it was expecting a application.id to exist, right, on the template data. And what happened was the method was actually being passed an empty object. So it was looking through every application in the applications collection for, because thankfully there was another key that we hard coded, right? So like imagine this query, an empty, we are looking for application ID, which is indexed, right? And you have also a rejection ID, which is hard coded because all rejections have the same ID, thank God. Now, the Mongo is actually looking for every application that has a rejection ID, not the one that you actually wanted, and updating it accordingly. So that was a huge bug that was not even a server problem, not anybody else's problem. It was the client problem because you missed data context. It is like the worst category of bugs because one, you couldn't see it happening. There's no tools to help you. And two, you're literally put down your whole site for like 10 minutes while it's searching over 1 million applications. That is such a bad thing. And ever since that day, we've been super strict. And people have finally listened that, hey, man, this thing, that's real. And hopefully people listening to this, like, don't get bit in the butt like that because it's really, really, really crappy. Especially you have responsibility to your managers. You have responsibility to your customers that, or believe in your product, and you're gonna mess them over a data context issue. Something so small, like you should mess people over bigger issues than that. You know what I mean? So that's my anecdote about that, and I really hope people stop doing that.
Ouch. Yep.
Good stuff.
So what about patterns for getting the data in the first place? So you mentioned smart and dumb components, and so what do you do there?
Yeah. So what we do at Workpop, which I recommend people do, is actually think of your app as a Flux architecture app. And Flux is a way to build React apps, but doesn't mean it's just for React, right? It's an architecture pattern. And one of my predictions for 2016 is Flux is going to be commonplace. That's just going to be the way to build apps. You're not going to call it Flux. You're just going to be calling it the way to build stuff. Mm-hmm. And the reason why is the concept of Flux is to have your data go in a unidirectional pattern. And it goes from the top to something called a smart component, right? And in Meteor land, a smart component is something that does a template.subscribe. It is responsible for getting data, right? And then it pushes the data down to these dumb components that may use some of the objects to display. And the views, right, the buttons and the tables and stuff, they actually don't affect the data directly. They actually call, this intermediary layer, which I like to call the action layer. In a traditional Flux app, you actually have some type of dispatcher. And these are all keywords, and I hope people just read this after because I could explain this for days. But a dispatcher actually sends a message to some imaginary layer to say, hey, I like to update this with these parameters. And then it goes all the way back to the original data layer and presses all the way down. So it's a huge circle. It's a circle of life. And what we do at Workpop, and I'll go into detail here now, is we have smart components at the top level, and this is all Blaze right now. The template will subscribe, right? We'll subscribe to X subscription. Then we have a data template. And a data template, what it does is it is wrapped in a isReady call, right? So the data template itself has several templates inside of it, right? And it's cool because you're guaranteed to have your data. There's no more iron router wait-ons. There's none of that. There's none of that stuff. You're guaranteed because we're going to show a loading spinner or something until the data is ready. Mm-hmm. And in the data template, there's a bunch of presentational components that just render UI. And that's how the data flows in our app, from top to the bottom. We've built something at Workpop that we'll be releasing soon. It's called the Action Creator. And the Action Creator, not to be confused with, the different action creators in different Flux frameworks, the Action Creator is actually a lesser of all evils. You know how, like in Meteor right now, you have to have global objects to do everything. There's no modules. Mm-hmm. And what we were finding was if we wanted to abstract template logic between a bunch of templates, we would just create new globals left, right, and center.
Yep.
They had no meaning to each other. We didn't think about how they can be composed together. We didn't think about the structure of these globals. We were making job global, application global, some specific global that only had one function on it. And if you looked at our globals, we were maybe 100, 200 globals, right? That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when your app gets more sophisticated, you can't have globals that are super generic like post. There's going to be some person's going to come in here. He's going to make a post object. And he's going to overwrite your stuff, and it's going to be completely.
Yep.
It's going to be anarchy, right? So what we did was we thought, well, instead of having a bunch of globals, let's just have one global, and we created something called a action mixin. And this mixin is just it's a plain object, and what you can do is you can actually mix in functionality to it, right? So you actually register. Let's say I have a function called create post, and create post is actually called by 10 templates. They all try to create posts and stuff. We actually register the create post method, not Meteor method, but just a function with very very general parameters, or an options object, if whatever, and we mix that into a action mixins global. Right. So now there's one global that may have hundreds of functions. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the template that's responsible for calling create post, when it is created, we bind a action creator
Mm-hmm.
to the template. Right. So now the template has a reference to the three functions it needs, and they live on one big global. Right. And now our events are not. Our template events don't have any business logic in them. There's nothing in there at all. Just you need to be responsible enough to get the data context that the functions need to do their job. Mm-hmm. And that actually has separated the view from the business logic. And that has helped us out tremendously. When your template events, and a lot of Meteor apps, you can see this, the template events have 100 lines of code in there. And when you want to debug something or you want to reuse it, it's getting really tough to think about, well, this thing was written so specifically for this one template. How am I going to use it for another? So what we've been doing is we've been using this action creator pattern, and we've been preaching it to everybody. So now everyone thinks oh, I need to make an event. I need to make some action. Let me generalize it from the beginning. Let me put in an action creator, and let me share that amongst all my UI components that need it. And that actually funnels back to the server if you're doing Meteor calls or anything like that. And then we still have this unidirectional pattern. Mm-hmm. So subscription, data context, action creator, back to the subscription and down. So it's definitely a circular pattern, and it works very well for Blaze apps.
So if I understand correctly, the action creator would be called, it has functions that would be called from your event handler.
Correct.
And if you've got some kind of business logic, you'll put them in there, not directly in the event handler, which sounds like a good idea because it'll also be reusable. You can attach it to multiple different templates.
Exactly.
Cool.
And the best thing about the action creator is you don't have to do template events for tests. I hate testing templates. Yeah. What you can actually do is, since this thing lives on its own object, which is global, you can instantiate it in a test. And then you can just test that by itself in isolation.
Yeah.
So you don't have to test and worry about template events at all. You just test the object.
Yeah, that's a great pattern for testing, for unit tests in general. Anytime you can separate. So functions are really easy to test. Anything that takes an input and given an input gives some expected output, that's simple to test really quickly with unit tests. And if you've got that stuff tied in with presentation and event handling and all kinds of stuff, it's really messy. So that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely got super messy when we were doing some jQuery stuff alongside business logic. And I don't know, when a new guy comes in who may come from different, maybe Ember or Angular or whatever, they're like, man, what's going on here? There's a lot of stuff. They don't know exactly what's important and what's not. And I find that a lot of the times the presentational stuff gets really mixed into Meteor business logic, and then you don't know what way's up.
Yeah.
And that's really tough. It's tough to reason about. That's the whole thing. I want people to be able to hit the ground running, especially in a startup. You want to, front end definitely never gets prioritized that much in startups as, CSS changes and all these things. Well, I don't want that. I have a huge standard for quality. And like, even though we don't have time to worry about, the little things, I want it to be so you don't have to worry about the little things, because if you do it a certain way,
Yeah.
we won't have to worry about the little things. They'll already be done, you
Yeah.
know?
That's awesome.
So yeah, I really think so. And I would love to see how it fares. Like with 3 front end engineers now working with me, we've been scaling the Action Creator up even bigger than when I was by myself. And even the backend engineers are falling in love with the pattern and they're using it. And this is growing.
So I'm looking forward to seeing you release something. You should write about this too. That's really interesting.
Yeah. I actually talked to Tom Colin about this pattern, and he said that it seems like right at this point, it seems like a very work pop problem. And it's true. Maybe I don't think that anyone has seen people talk about this problem, but maybe after I
Well,
blog about it,
I think that you guys have probably one of the more complicated UIs in Meteor apps that I know of. Also, I think you guys have a very uncompromising sort of you you don't dumb down what the UI looks like. I mean, I think you guys start with saying like what would the interface really want to look like, and you don't sort of base it on what's easy or
yeah, yeah,
so
that makes life hard, but we
yeah,
get it. We get the job done.
yeah, that's awesome.
And it's always, yeah, it's all about the little things. And the people who are listening, who are front end developers, like, don't lose sight of the little things, because that's where your craftsmanship really
Yeah.
comes out. Especially as a front end developer, that's how you know that you're a good craftsman. If your CSS is great, if the small little template files are doing, really nice things, and you can test them, and these things are just going to be skills that are so valuable as front end takes over the world, because it really is,
I
right?
totally agree. Yeah, I mean, for any kind of software engineer, I think being really nitpicky about details is really important.
Yeah. So don't get pissed at people who blame you for your padding problems. Those are
Yeah,
real.
yeah.
Padding is real, man. It's not fake. They're not lying to you. It really this you need 4 pixels more. Come on.
And so I didn't want to get sidetracked a minute ago because this action creator stuff was interesting, but you touched on globals or
Yeah.
making things global, and I think no conversation about scaling front end and avoiding messes in your front end stuff would be complete without talking about global stuff.
Yeah.
So session would be a pretty good example of a global thing that people really tend to abuse a lot, eh?
Yeah, session is the biggest abuser, the biggest culprit of, you know, biggest culprit of things that don't die very easily. Um, and the reason is session variables they're great for things that are required by a user session. Now, there's a package called persistent session out there that somebody I know wrote. I think I'm talking to him right now. And that's really great if you want this type of data to persist over refreshes or hot code reload. But most of the time, I'll tell you, most of the time, that's definitely not necessary. A lot of people use session variables for anything under the sun. Setting something to true, right? Some session variable that sets something to true in the template instance that is not on any other page,
Yeah.
that doesn't make any sense, because if one, there's a global namespace for session. Two, most people aren't that creative. So you're going to have the same names.
Yeah.
And three, if you don't destroy them yourself, which means you unset whatever you did, they will consistently follow you around
Yeah.
your whole session.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. And because, especially if you're going back between flows and you want an isolated experience, this thing will bleed. This will bleed all over you. And you're going to be one, you could start destroying sessions, and then you have a session management problem, which is a term that I coined here with my coworkers, where, oh, the session variables still exist. Well, I'm like, oh, you have a session management problem, and you need to fix that, because it really is annoying. So what we do is we use reactive vars. And here's another pattern that I just started using, and I'm going to write about soon. I'll give you the sneak peek, Paul. Is we actually
Exclusive right here.
we stopped using reactive vars too. And what we did is we created a concept of a WP store. And a WP store is it's a instance object that under the hood is initialized into a null Mongo collection, right?
Nice.
A null mini Mongo collection. So I can have a random state, right? Here's an example. I have 4 list items and I want them all to be open at the same time, right? Well, one way you could do that is you could store all the IDs in an array. And if you click on one of them, it goes into the array and you can do some magic to say it's open. And if they're all in the array, right? Underscores your best friend. Now, what kind of sucks about that is working with arrays is not that great, right? You're trying to find something, you want to remove it, you have to push to the front or back. That sucks, right? And the great thing about a store, which we'll also be releasing very soon, is you have Mongo syntax, right? So the same problem becomes you're not getting an array and doing something to it, then reactive var dot setting it back, and that's all nuisance, right? Well, now you can actually push $push to an array. You can $pull. You can completely destroy the array with a set, right? You have Mongo syntax on the client, and we've built a good wrapper around a mini Mongo collection that's null, and has a bunch of helper methods. And one thing people don't realize is, like, when you have a complex UI, that state is moving in and out of these mini Mongo collections, you might lose your reactiveness with the server, right? A lot of the times, if you want to make a performant UI, you're actually not doing optimistic UI per se, right? You're doing a subscription, you're getting the data, and because we have a lot of data, we don't want the overhead of updating the server every single time we're changing state. So what we did is we actually dump the data that we get from the server, whether we use a Meteor method or a subscription, we dump it into one of these client-side stores, and then we update the data as much as we want. We can do super expensive operations that we don't even care. Not that we do, but we could do. And then once the user is ready to submit this data or confirm it, then we'll do a post. We'll post it or hit a Meteor method and all that stuff. So it's been really working out.
So a null Mongo collection, client side only. You initialize it without giving it a name or whatever. So it just becomes like it's a Mongo collection that you can query, but it doesn't get synced back to the server, and it's just kind of a temporary thing.
It's a temporary thing.
Cool. And so do those persist between hot code pushes?
No, they do not. So you will lose your business.
Yep.
But I heard there is a package that we can contribute to in terms of persistent things that maybe I should take a look at and help you out or help myself out. Because that's definitely a problem that we found. But honestly, we push really late at night. You know this. We push very late when there's like nobody on. So we haven't really cared about it, to be honest.
Yep.
But if we ever do, then once the app gets bigger and there are more users in different time zones and stuff, we're definitely not going to be always pushing when there's nobody on. So we have to solve these problems when we can.
Yep. But it's pretty awesome to be able to query it. I think that's a really great idea.
Yeah, and it just makes you as a client developer a lot more powerful. And if you're not very good at array manipulation or, just doing basic JavaScripty things, and you picked up Mongo because you like Meteor and you've been using it a lot, it really helps you out. You become a little bit more, more versed in the Mongo sphere. And I think it makes you definitely understand what's going on and how, client-side DBs actually work.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a good journey for anybody to do, whether you use the package we release or just chill by yourself and do something. Definitely think it's something interesting. We still use reactive vars to do Boolean flags like true or false because those are really easy. It's kind of overkill to just have a mini Mongo collection that has a true or false key, but there could be some complex object that you just want to tack on. Maybe an in-memory log where you log actions that happen to the state, and you could put visibility flags on it if it's true or not. And it's up to you. Like at that point, you're a client-side back-end engineer. At that point, you can do whatever you want. You can make your own schema. You can really have fun with it. And there's actually no repercussions because if you refresh the page, it goes away. So. If anyone likes hitting reset on their video games, it's just like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think that is a good summary of stuff to do to keep your complex code manageable.
Yeah.
Um, and so, do you have any last words for developers? By the way, I should mention that Abhi, for anyone who's listening, that Abhi has a really great podcast that he does with Ben, the Abhi and Ben Show, and
Yes.
it is packed full of advice for new developers and people like at various stages in their careers. So so do you have any other advice for us on
I have two bits of advice that I'd like to give before we leave. The first one is like so this one's funny. Don't sweat the man, I screwed it up already. Um, don't sweat the hairy things and don't pet the sweaty things. I don't know. It's like something weird. What I mean by that is don't get bogged down in the little things that UI entails. There's a lot of little things that UI entails, and there's a lot of hurdles you have to jump to get a good UI, a good complex UI. Don't sacrifice your that because it's hard, because you're only sacrificing the user experience. So if anyone needs help with getting over these hurdles, I'm always available. Part of the Meteor Club, Slack chat room. You can email me at abhi at workpop.com, and we can talk through your problems. I really don't want people to skim over these little details, especially because as Meteor grows, people are going to look at Meteor apps, and if they look like crap, then it's all on us to make sure the community is better. So I'll take that. I'll take that first stab at helping people out. The second thing is, because not everyone's a noob that watches this show or listens to the show. If you're a developer or a development shop that actually needs outsourced work or an in work team, I would suggest OK Grow.
Oh, thanks.
And I'm not gonna. It's not. He didn't pay me to say this, but maybe he did. Oh, no. Honestly, the guys at OK Grow really got our app to where it needed to be at the time. We were 6 engineers. They came in, they worked with us, they were very friendly. We all became friends at the end of the day, and we continue to still talk to each other and be friends. So I really think if you need something like that to get you to the next level, OK Grow is a great job. It does a great job and is a great partner in that. So those are my 2 tips of advice
Awesome.
for this episode.
And if you want more advice from Abhi, check out the Ben and Abhi show, or is it the Abhi and Ben and Abhi?
So Ben and Abhi.
Oh, you guys must have had an arm wrestle over that, and you won,
you know
I guess.
what?
Ben and
You
Abhi,
know,
no, Ben won.
Ben won. Ben won. So maybe you should deduct his pay and don't give him any vacation hours. All right, Paul?
Excellent. All right, and so last question is Workpop hiring? Are you guys, and if so, what are you guys looking for?
Workpop is hiring one full stack developer with front end tendencies, which means that you like building front end and you like the back end as well, but you're more interested in how the back end helps your front end, right? And we're looking for a DevOps group, someone who's like really good at Mongo, at microservices, the little cool word that's buzzing around lately. Someone who can make sure that we get to the next level. So those are the 2 positions open right now. But honestly, if you're really good and we like your resume, just because we're hiring 2 doesn't mean we're not going to hire you. So you can find us at workpop.com/careers, and you'll see our open jobs there. And if you don't see something you're interested in, you think you're really good for the team, apply to one of the jobs on there. And then, we have a cover letter system. You're actually going to be using Workpop to apply to this job. So give us feedback as well, and have fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Abhi. It was great talking to you.
Hey, no problem, Paul. Thanks.
Thanks for listening. If you liked this show, you can subscribe using iTunes or your favorite podcast app. For more info, visit meteorinterviews.com. To learn more about OK Grow and the work we do, you can find us at okgrow.com.